In the dead of winter, 1944, it really looked like the war in Europe was almost over. Allied victories seemed just around the corner. But that's when Hitler decided to roll the dice one last time, launching a massive, desperate offensive on the Western Front. It would go down in history as a true legend of warfare and a defining moment for the American soldier. So let's get into this incredible story.
And that's really the big question we're going to tackle here. How did this single surprise attack, this one last desperate gamble designed to completely shatter the Allied armies, end up shattering Germany's own final hopes instead? And at such a staggering cost for literally everyone involved. All right, we're going to break this down into 5 parts. First, we'll look at the secret plan behind Hitler's gamble. Then, the total shock of the attack in the Ardennes. Next up, how American soldiers held the line against all odds. Then, we'll see how the Allies hit back, hard. And finally, we'll look at the brutal legacy this battle left behind.
So let's set the stage. It's late 1944. Allied forces are on a roll, pushing across France, heading right for Germany itself. But, they're moving so fast that their supply lines are getting stretched dangerously thin, and that created a hidden vulnerability nobody saw coming.
And this is where a bit of psychology comes into play. The Allies, well, they were getting overconfident. They saw the dense, hilly Ardennes forest as a quiet sector, a perfect spot to let tired troops rest or to break in some new guys. They just didn't believe the Germans had anything left in the tank for a major offensive. That turned out to be a massive miscalculation.
And to exploit that overconfidence, the Germans kept their plans under a cloak of absolute secrecy. Even the codename Watch on the Rhine was a brilliant piece of misdirection. It sounded like they were just digging in to defend Germany, not getting ready to pour thousands of troops back across the border.
And what a plan it was. I mean, it was incredibly audacious, like something straight out of their 1940 playbook, pure blitzkrieg. The goal wasn't just to push the Allies back a bit. No, the idea was to drive a huge wedge between the British and American forces, capture the critical supply port of Antwerp, and trap 4 entire Allied armies. Hitler actually believed a blow this stunning could force the Allies to sue for peace.
But for this whole thing to work, everything had to go perfectly. The entire operation was really balanced on a knife's edge. It needed 4 things to happen. 1, total surprise. 2, terrible weather to keep the powerful Allied air forces grounded. 3, a lightning-fast advance. In 4, and this was maybe the most critical part, they had to capture Allied fuel dumps along the way, because Germany just didn't have enough gas to get the job done on its own.
So, at 5:30 in the morning on December 16th, hidden by a massive artillery barrage and a thick winter fog, the gamble began.
And the initial shock was just overwhelming. German tanks and infantry tore right through the Finn-American lines. They poured into the Ardennes, creating that deep bulge on the war maps that gave the battle its famous name. In just a week, they had pushed over 50 miles, getting dangerously close to their first major objective, the Meuse River.
So you really have a tale of 2 fronts here. On one side, you've got American troops who are either exhausted or totally green, spread way too thin and caught completely by surprise. And on the other, a huge concentrated German force that had pulled off a total surprise, with the weather basically acting as their best friend by keeping Allied planes on the ground.
And just to add to the sheer chaos, a special commando unit, Operation Grief, snuck in behind Allied lines. These were German soldiers who spoke English, driving American jeeps and wearing American uniforms. They went around changing road signs, spreading rumors. It caused this incredible wave of paranoia that was way, way bigger than their actual numbers. But the thing about Hitler's plan is that it started to unravel almost as quickly as it began. The element of surprise was gone. Now it was all about sheer grit and determination. The German advance, which absolutely depended on speed, basically slammed into a couple of brick walls. In the north, the fighting at Elsenborn Ridge was just ferocious, and it blocked the shortest route to Antwerp. But it was in the south, at the vital crossroads town of Bastogne, that the battle's fate would really be decided. So, the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, they were rushed to Bastogne just in the nick of time, along with parts of the 10th Armored Division. By December 21st, they were completely cut off, totally surrounded, facing unbelievable odds. So when the German commander sends a formal demand for their surrender, the American in charge, General McAuliffe, gives this now legendary one-word answer: nuts. I mean, that one word just perfectly captured the absolute defiance of these guys. It's become one of the most iconic moments of the whole war.
And their defiance is even more incredible when you know the conditions. They were running out of everything: food, ammo, medical supplies. It was freezing cold, they were exhausted, but they held that town. They refused to give up the crossroads that the Germans so desperately needed. But while the defenders of Bastogne were hanging on by a thread, the entire Allied war machine was roaring to life. They were getting ready to punch back and completely erase that Bulge. Okay, so two things really broke the German attack. First, around December 23rd, the clouds finally broke, the skies cleared, and thousands of Allied fighter bombers were unleashed on the exposed German tanks and trucks. And second, General George Patton. He pulled off one of the most amazing moves of the war, turning his entire Third Army 90 degrees and racing north through the snow to break the siege. Just think about the sheer scale of the Allied response. It was staggering. In just 1 week, 250,000 troops were rerouted to the Ardennes. Germany's initial advantage, that element of surprise, it was about to be completely buried under the crushing weight of Allied numbers and industrial power. And the effect was almost immediate. The day after Christmas, Patton's tanks smashed through and relieved Bastogne. Then, over the next month, Allied forces just relentlessly squeezed the Bulge from both the north and the south, until, by the end of January, the front lines were right back where they'd started. But that victory, man, it came at a terrible, terrible price. Let's take a moment to look at the absolutely devastating human cost of this failed gamble.
The numbers are just mind-boggling. The United States suffered over 80,000 casualties, which made this the single bloodiest battle of the war for them. German losses were just as catastrophic, with some estimates going as high as 100,000 men.
When all was said and done, the Battle of the Bulge was a fatal blow to the German war machine. It completely used up the last of Germany's elite armored divisions and shattered what was left of their air force. The simple fact is, the Allies could replace their awful losses, Germany could not. From this point on, it was just a constant retreat on the Western Front. So we're left with this lingering question. Was this whole offensive just a madman's fantasy right from the start? Or was it actually a brilliant, calculated risk that came achingly close to succeeding, only to be undone by clearing skies, empty fuel tanks, and just some unbelievable American grit? It's a debate that historians are still having to this very day.